What's going on, buddy? My name is Andy Graham. I am an adjunct professor at Austin Community College in the welding department. I am making this video today so I can introduce myself to you and maybe give you a little guidance to give you an example of where I came from, where I started from, and how I got to where I am today. And this video, again, it's primarily to be used for guidance in case maybe you don't know where you want to go. Maybe you're where I was 10 years ago, which was just starting out in the welding industry. Maybe you're where I was 15 years ago, where I was unemployed and really didn't have anything going for me. But I wanted to be, I knew that at some point I was going to have kids and I would be a stay at home dad. And that's kind of where I ended up for a while until I figured out where I wanted to go, and that was into the welding industry. Um, but again, this is just a video to introduce myself, uh, give you some information on kind of the path I took starting out, and kind of how I got to where I am today. So that if anybody else is out there just unsure of where you can kind of go in this world, and maybe you're thinking about trying the welding industry, learning to become a welder, or just learning how to get into trades in general, I just wanted to share my story so that maybe if it hits a point with you, you might be inspired to kind of take a similar route and make a similar story for yourself. So that's going to be the primary goal with this video. And I guess I wanted to get started from kind of way before I got into the welding industry. I just wanted to. I didn't grow up in a trades family, so to speak. Uh, my parents were not in the trades industry. Nobody was a welder. They were actually accountants. One was an accountant and one was a bookkeeper. So I didn't live in a home where I got my hands dirty and messed around in the garage too much. It was no, I was mainly a stayed indoor and kind of play video games kind of kid, and skateboard outside a little bit. But that's kind of how I grew up. I didn't grow up building things, so to speak. Um, I'm sure I swung a hammer here and there, and at least I knew how to use some hand tools, some basic stuff, but nothing very complicated. No carpentry, definitely no metalworking or welding in that sense. Definitely not mechanic either. I'm not. Still to this day, I take my vehicle in so that somebody else can work on it, because if I start working on it too much, if it gets too complicated, uh, probably good things are not going to happen. I can change the oil and I can maybe do some very small minor repairs, but you start getting into that engine, getting into those things I can't pronounce. Um, we're going a little too far, and I better take it to an expert. So not super mechanically inclined growing up, but I guess the first time I did have at least scratch the surface of welding was in high school when I went to the metal shop, and there was a metal shop class I took in. It was either my freshman or sophomore year. Either my freshman or sophomore year, that was my first experience with welding and fabrication and metalworking in general. Now, I say that I scratched the surface because I barely even touched the machines while I was there. Um, it was a very, very relaxed metal shop class. It was very much a participation grade at that point. If you showed up, you're probably going to do all right. Uh, and if you participated to the actual extent of getting your hands dirty and messing with the machines, then you'd probably get an A. I probably got a B in there because I'm fairly certain, for the most part, we just watched skate videos while we were in that class. And I think the ones that watched skate videos got a B, and the ones who actually participated and built things got an A. But again, it wasn't super motivated to get into the trades at that point. and that was, sophomore year of high school. I was a teenager. I was more interested in jumping on the skateboard and kind of running around and getting into trouble of all sorts. But that was my very first experience with a welding machine in general. They had some tack welders there, um, resistance spot welding machines there. They had the opportunity to fabricate a little hibachi grill, which again I didn't partake. I didn't participate in that, so I didn't actually make one. But but at least I had some experience of being in a shop at that point, if you can call it that. But that to say that eventually, you know, through growing up in a house with a family that wasn't really involved in trades, getting into the high school metal shop, um, and then after that, after high school, I went to college for a semester. I didn't do very well. Um, to the extent that I didn't go back after the first semester. I took one semester and I realized college wasn't for me. I was still playing around too much, having probably too much fun, and I took a semester there at the local university, and I just had too much fun. Didn't stick around, didn't stick it out, and so instead of continuing my college education, I decided to just go work, get some jobs. So I was probably about 18 at the time, and I took various jobs, working in restaurants as a server, um, working at the local Hollywood Video. If anybody remembers what that is, that's where it's kind of like Blockbuster. You'd go and rent movies, take them home, and watch them. What else I did? I did actually work a summer doing some lawn maintenance for the school district. That was kind of fun. I actually enjoyed being outside. That was one of my favorite jobs, which is interesting how this eventually led to where I'm at now. But it was working an outside job, and I was getting my hands dirty and getting very sweaty working in these Texas heat. And that was a very enjoyable job, and I couldn't really put my finger on why. I had worked inside, I'd worked in restaurants and like that, but the lawn mowing job was a lot of fun. Getting outside and fresh air and you know, driving around that big old zero turn mower. Just there was something to it. Getting some exercise while I was working. So I think that kind of started maybe the interest in the kind of the outdoor and laborious work. But so I did that, but then that was probably that was a little bit after high school and into college. Now, um, once I had gotten through, and I'd still been doing a lot of these jobs. I've been doing various jobs. I had a lot of jobs growing up. I've done a little bit of everything, and that was in about 2000. I graduated in 2004 in high school. So in 2005, 2006, like I said, I worked in the Hollywood Video. I did that for a lot. Did some retail and restaurant work. That was kind of what I was decent at that time because everybody was. It's really hard to not be good at that kind of stuff. But I did the restaurant retail stuff, and that was in a little town south of Austin, Texas. Now, at Hollywood Video, I did meet my wife there, and we went on, and she was from Austin, and so we moved up to Austin eventually. She was my girlfriend at the time, but we moved up to Austin, and I got a job in Austin working for the Department of Public Safety. Now, that was just an office job doing what they call data entry. Data entry is a very monotonous and mindless job. Data entry was I would pretty much see a driver's license on the screen on a piece of paper that had been scanned in, and then I would type in the driver's license number that I saw on that scanned in piece of paper and associate it with a file now. So read the driver's license number, type it in, do it again for about, maybe 1 to 200 times a day. And I did that for about 3 years. How I did that, I don't know. It was steady. It was a decent paycheck. It was working for the state government, so it had some good benefits. But It was definitely mindless. You just sat there for hours, 8 hours a day, just typing in driver's license numbers. And yeah, after about 3 years, I kind of figured that maybe I wanted to try something else. It made a good paycheck, and it was a very stable job, but eventually I wasn't really looking for stability. I wanted to do something bigger. I didn't know what that was, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it there, sitting at that desk, entering in driver's license numbers. The data entry was just a bit of a soul sucking job, and I had to get out, which I eventually did. Um, 2009, I believe, was my last year there, and uh, I had dreams of going to be a copywriter and being a writer of some sort. Uh, I wanted to be a writer, whether that meant creative writing or business writing, copywriting. I felt like that was kind of what was calling to me at that time. I had done some creative writing for some video game websites, writing guides and whatnot, but eventually I uh, left that job at Department of Public Safety in about 2009, 2010, and I attempted to be a independent contractor as a copywriter. It didn't really pan out too well. I think I knew more about writing than I did about running a business and being an independent contractor. And so that business pretty much failed. I might have made a little bit of money and had a couple of clients, but yeah, it didn't take off. And I know that was more so on me and just having lack of experience and lack of knowledge of how to properly run a business, and more into sales rather than the actual craft of writing. Sales is just so important. And what happened was after that, that was, I did that venture for about a year or two, and it turned into me just kind of hanging out at the house, not doing anything, kind of just being unemployed with a dream of being an independent contractor as a writer. And, at that point, I've been married for a few years. We were wanting to have kids sooner than later, but it was a very, I mean, bless my wife's heart for, you know, having the job and allowing me to take this time to figure out what I wanted to do. There was a little bit of shame in it because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't bringing home a check, and I was literally just kind of hanging out at the house, trying to discover myself, so to speak, and figure out what I needed to do, what was calling me, what was actually useful as a purpose. And so after that, a couple of years, we actually uh, had kids a couple of years later, and since I wasn't doing anything anyways, I was a stay-at-home dad. Uh, I wasn't working, and daycare expenses, if anybody has paid them, knows that they are ridiculous. And the daycare expenses would have cost more than I could have made working a job at that time, given my lack of a college degree, lack of any real skills, other than maybe some creative writing. But it made more sense for me to stay at home with my kids, who were twins. So, yeah, daycare expenses times two. It just made way more sense for me to just stay at home myself and take care of them and raise them while the missus went to work and brought home the bacon. She was the breadwinner. To this day, still is, as she continues to let me uh, try out all these different ventures. So I stayed at home, raised the kids for a few years until it was about time for kindergarten. And but before that actually happened, they had these Mother's Day out programs at the local church, and we were able to allow them to start doing some of that, more of a kind of a pre-daycare type thing. But what at that point, I wasn't going to stay home anymore. I needed to figure something out, and I did. And what I figured out is that I read an article by Mike Rowe. If you understand Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy, as we'll say, and It was an article probably published somewhere in the 2013, 2014, maybe somewhere around there. But I know it was around that time. He might have written it even way before that. But the general idea of the article was that at this point in time, uh, the early 2000 teens, is that the blue collar workers, and this is still the same for today, but the blue collar workers were reaching uh, the age of retirement. A lot of the blue collar workers, even today, are reaching an age of retirement, and there's a bit of an employment gap there for once they all retire. We don't have enough tradesmen, carpenters, welders, electricians, things like that to replace them. Um, I think construction work and the trades were a much bigger thing when the boomers, as they're called, the blue collar workers of that age, there was more emphasis placed on that. And growing up, there was more during my time growing up, and there was way more emphasis on going to college. There was not a big emphasis on the trades, and I think that's to the detriment, as we've kind of seen in recent times, to the infrastructure and just kind of employment in the country in general. But that goes off on a way different tangent. But the general story and the idea is that there was a gap there and there was an opportunity there. And I read that article and I said, okay, well, I remember I did like working outside. And that one job that I had a long time ago was a maintenance crew lawnmower for the school district. And I like getting outside. I like playing outside when I was a kid, skateboarding for hours on end outside in the heat in the Texas summers. And it didn't bother me too much. I liked being outside. And I also, I was a bit of a little pyromaniac when I was a kid. And I liked playing with fireworks and when we got to go burn brush on our property, our small 1 acre property, we still had plenty of trees and brush to burn. And boy, I don't know, there was something to it just watching that bonfire, that brush pull up. So, but I think a lot of that combined, and I heard about what welding is. Well, what is welding? Welding is, well, you essentially get the power of the sun on the end of an electrode, and you're melting metal together at extremely high temperatures, and you're playing with fire, and somebody's paying you for it. And I thought that sounded right up my alley. So I get to go play with fire and get paid to do it, and see sparks and whatnot fly around, and wear a really cool looking hood that makes me look like a badass. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what that's all about. So after reading that article, that was the kind of the idea that got it started down this path that I'm currently on now, and that's when I decided. I tried to figure out how I wanted to approach this path. Um, I had zero experience, next to zero experience with welding in general, other than a failed, just going and participating in a metal shop class in the 10th grade. So I didn't really know where to begin. I don't think I could have walked into a shop. If I did, they might have just handed me a grinder at that time. I had no idea, but I did know that I did hear that the local community college here in Austin had a very good welding department. And so I kind of wanted to see what the options were, as either going straight into work in the welding industry and the fabrication industry, or if I wanted to take some classes and maybe get some education and knowledge in the welding industry before jumping into a job. And that's what I did. I ended up, like I said, hearing about the ACC, Austin Community College Welding Department, and I inquired with the department chair there at the time, and trying to figure out, how do I get started? What are the costs? What are the requirements? What do I need? Supplies and whatnot. And I went that route. Uh, Again, before this, I was a stay-at-home dad. The kids were reaching the age where they wouldn't need a stay-at-home dad anymore. They were going to start going to school. So I needed to find something to do. I needed to find a purpose. I needed to find a direction, and I found it by taking welding classes at the local community college and becoming an educated welder. And that is where this path starts to where I am now. Now, obviously, I just spent 20 minutes telling you about everything that kind of came before that, where I came from, where I started, and how I at least got to the start of my welding journey. And I tell that story because I tell all of that before talking about before I got into welding, so that other people who may not think, oh, I'm not a tradesman. I don't know. I never did any of that. I've only worked at restaurants. And whatever, you can still do it, and it's completely respectable, and it's fun. You get to go play outside. I say play outside, work outside, but I have so much fun with it. It's a fun job to get out there and work hard and get strength and get exercise while you're working. You're getting paid to work out to an extent, depending on how you do it. And you get to build some neat things, work with your hands, and there's some pride that goes into that too. But just you can come from several different backgrounds and get started in these trades industries wherever you are. And I say that to just reassure anybody who may be on the fence or thinking about it. And it's a great direction to go. And I'll say that because once I made that decision to go down this path, I got an education as a code welder. All right, the video kind of cut off there for a second because I ran out of room uh, on the storage on my phone. So maybe something to think about in the future before I start trying to do one of these maybe 20 to 30-minute long videos. But where I stopped there was that I did go to Austin Community College into the welding department, and I got a degree as a code welder. So what a code welder is a welder that is able to weld in accordance with a specific standard. In this case, there was for the structural welding code, AWSD 1.1, or you can also weld in accordance with ASME Section 9. These are various codes that you are required to weld with a high enough skill level to be able to do this in accordance with those standards. Very high standards set for, say, pipelines or structural elements for buildings and things. And so I got a degree as a code welder, and I also got a degree as a welding inspector. Now, again, I went straight to school for this. Started school in about 2015, and I finished, and I got these two degrees about 2019. So I was leaving Austin Community College as a code welder and a welding inspector. And, uh, a few $1,000s later, along with some scholarships, a lot of this stuff, it wasn't that much, is what I'm trying to say. It was a bit of a time commitment and money commitment. I wasn't working at this time. I did have a spouse who was taking care of the bills at this time. So I do understand that I was very privileged and blessed to have that going for me, to be able to give me that opportunity. So that does say that not everybody's able maybe to do it the exact same way I did, but just know that it is possible. It might take a little longer, but I was able to spend pretty much full time at the college welding department and getting those two degrees knocked out in about 3 to 4 years. After that, as becoming a welding inspector, which is a certified welding inspector, or a CWI. I went from being a CWI, and I got my CWI, I believe, in June of 2019, and I was immediately employed in July of 2019. So 1 month later, I had my first job in the welding industry, and I was a welding inspector. I didn't have a job as a welder in my career as a W-2 employee anywhere, but I did build things in my shop independently. I do repairs for people in the neighborhood and build various little fabrications, whether it be some steel crafts or trailer ramps for trucks and vehicles, small fabrications that I could build within my garage and still put those and sell those. So I did do that. But I went straight into welding inspection, and I worked for a pretty big fab shop here in the Central Texas area, and I was their quality control. And there's quality control department in the fabrication shop and in the field for the erection crews putting up the buildings that they would fabricate inside the shop. I did that for a couple of years, and after that, I wanted to see what it was like on the other side. Whereas in fabrication you have quality control, where you may work for the steel erector or the steel fabricator. You work as quality control, making sure everything in the shop is good, and when they're erecting it, it's good. But I wanted to see the other side of that, which was quality assurance, and that would be as more of a third-party inspector. And in this case, I went into that immediately as an independent contractor, as a third-party inspector, and that was an experience in itself, just being able to figure out how to do your own books. Got a lot more experience from that. I learned a lot more than I did doing the copywriting thing before, but I had to manage my taxes, manage my expenses, keep track of all of that, and manage a little bit of a business there as an independent contractor. Uh, but then, so I did that for also a couple of years, and actually did several inspections on there's a Tesla Gigafactory here in Austin, and I did several inspections on that as the independent contractor for that little stint. So 2 years quality control for a fab shop and field director, and then 2 years as a quality assurance uh, independent contractor, welding inspector, doing various jobs around Austin, including the Tesla Gigafactory. And then after that, I did that for a couple of years, made a ton of money, but I was working 60-hour weeks pretty consistently, which isn't too uncommon in this industry, but working 60 hours a week, making tons of money as an inspector, doing these big jobs. Um, I eventually wanted to kind of pump the brakes, slow down, and I ended up going and moving on. Instead of being an independent contractor, I ended up being a W-2 employee for a local engineering firm, also in Austin. And I wanted to give that a shot. So independent contractor, it's really good, but you got to keep track of a lot of information. Got to keep track of your own expenses in your business. And there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely make better money, I believe, being as an independent contractor and doing it that way, since you can manage everything yourself. But I also wanted to uh, slow down, and then at that point go to work as a W-2 employee, still as a QA certified welding inspector, quality assurance welding inspector. So still as a third party welding inspector. And in this particular firm, they had jobs everywhere from so we're here in Austin. So we went from Austin up to Waco, maybe even over to Houston. I did take one trip up to Dallas and some in San Antonio. So it was quite a big range in Central Texas that I worked there and hit up a bunch of jobs doing that. Now, I did that for a couple of years, and then just wanted to kind of get out of the field for a little while. I wanted to find somewhere I was also wanting to make a bigger impact. Now, I would go to these sites, do inspections, and catch some of the bad things that were going on, and see some of the good things, get things approved and passed and whatnot, and write these reports, and very important stuff. But I wanted to try and make a bigger impact in the industry rather than maybe catching problems after the fact, after they had occurred, and then having them fixed. I wanted to see if there was a way I could kind of start more from the source, which then led me to head down the path of being an instructor, and in this case, an adjunct professor at the local welding department for Austin Community College, a school I had just gone to a few years prior. I had mentioned to the department chair several years before I was interested in just teaching in general. I enjoyed watching what they did, and just kind of at least made a note that maybe one day I can come back and kind of share this knowledge as myself, since they've done so much for me. And so I took some time off from actually ended up leaving that engineering firm as an inspector and I didn't actually have anything lined up yet. After that, I was just kind of like, well, I'll see where I kind of end up. But I was kind of done with the field inspections for the time being, trying to figure out how I wanted to make this bigger impact that I wanted to make. And maybe a week or two later, I did get a call from Austin Community College, and somebody asking, "Hey, we need somebody to instruct some classes." And we remember several years ago, you mentioned you had some interest. Is it still there? I mean, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So I said, yeah, of course, definitely interested. And um, I was given a class to teach in the fall of 2024, and I have now been teaching uh, with ACC, Austin Community College, welding department for the past now year and a half, and I'm having a blast teaching introductory welding classes and blueprint reading classes and a little bit of this and that, some intermediate classes tossed in there too. But it's been a wild ride, I guess, to kind of start summarizing this. That I went from not really knowing anything of what I wanted to do, not even having an inkling of being interested or uh, having any experience in the trades, 15 years ago, not being employed at that time. And then over the few years, I was a stay at home dad, trying to find my direction, my purpose, where I wanted to end up. And I ended up going to the local community college, uh, interest in the welding trade. And this could be, again, for any trade, but pursuing an education and knowledge in that trade before jumping in to the industry or jumping into work. I did have that, again, I had that liberty to do that, to learn about the trade rather than just jumping in and trying to get a job. And I did that, and the rest is history. Like I said, it turned everything around. For a couple of years there, especially working as an independent contractor, I did make more than the missus for a little bit. But when I went back as a W-2 employee doing inspections for the firm, kind of turned back around. But the possibilities to make a lot of money uh, as an inspector and in the trades in general, even as a welder, the opportunities are there, and it's fun. It's you get to get outside. You get to take pride in some of this work. I'm happy doing what I do, and I want to keep doing it. I don't, retirement isn't really an idea that comes into my head, um, especially as this teaching position. Uh, it's just, I wake up and it's a work day and I get excited to go. I got excited even as an inspector, maybe some days not so much as others, but especially now as a teacher and just in this industry in general, I do get excited to get up early and to accomplish something and accomplish work that means something, at least to me, and hopefully to a lot of other people. But I say that to kind of put that in summary, that if anybody is out there who has gone down a similar path to what I just described in the last half hour, um, maybe this is the path for you, and maybe this is the direction for you. And I guess I'm going to begin making more videos on this subject, on this topic, so that I can get a little bit more in depth on some of these areas. Maybe you're thinking about getting an education for a trade rather than just jumping straight into a job. And I can talk about my path in more detail on some of these things. But I want to start making videos for people that were like me in that position and are a little unaware, and want to give you confidence to know that you can uh, succeed in this direction if you so choose. But that's going to be it for today. I went for a half hour, and I'm sure I could fill up another half hour, but it'd probably just be me more rambling on. But we'll save that for another time. And I just want to thank I want to thank you for watching, because, like I said, this is videos for you, um, for you individually, my buddy. Okay, because uh, you know who I'm talking to. If this video, speaks to you directly, that was kind of the idea. Maybe this video is, speaking to me 15 years ago. Kind of figure out and let me know where I should have been headed maybe a little bit earlier. All right. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I can't wait to talk to you again. And until then, just have confidence. You're gonna get there. All right.